Hey there, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me tonight on night 21. No alcohol, so I can't even believe I made it this far. I even had some cravings or thoughts about it tonight. I was a little sad after the fact, but I mean, I can't help it. It just kind of pops in. But excuse me, I was able to quickly, shut it down and just say, no, I got this. Why am I having these thoughts? This is stupid. What the hell? But, um, I was just able to shoot it down quickly. So, thanks so much for listening and supporting me through this journey. I'm just really excited, and I couldn't have done it without you. I know you just are listening and watching, but I really just couldn't have done it without you. So even if it's me kind of in my own head, I feel like I'm talking to an imaginary friend or something. Just a friend that I don't know. It's hard to explain, but. And just thanks for listening and supporting. I appreciate it, and it's helped me get this far, and I'm just so excited to just keep it going. I feel myself getting better, and I'm excited. A lot of that momentum I keep talking about. Just I can't wait to go to the gym tonight and push it again. Definitely. But thanks a lot. I appreciate it. But it is time for the topic. I want to get into the topic. It's one I'm really excited to talk about. I wanted to talk about it for a while. I just need a little preparation, had to do some touch-ups. And I really think it needs to be talked about more. I know there's been lots of talk about it already. It's kind of an established thing. It's pretty much an answered question, but there's still disputing, there's still talk, not enough talk. So when I said there's still talk, I mean there's still people questioning it kind of talk. There's not enough answering talk. That's, tonight's topic, is addiction a disease? Spoilers, yes. Yes, it is. It's all medical, just pretty much I don't know any that don't. If you look up, esteemed medical organizations, every one of them agrees that it can be labeled and considered effectively a disease. It's been established. There's still people that question it, and I had to take a few classes on this information, but so much of it's just available online. There's so many just free websites that are just have education videos on this. I'm sure there's great YouTube videos. There's just a lot of information on addiction, and we're still learning so much about the human body, the human brain, and addiction itself. But we have a good understanding of the core of it, and I just want to talk about that information. I think I can break it down. I think I can explain it at least fairly okay, because I've watched a lot of material, and I just feel like I can summarize it, wrap it up, and ignore all the science kind of lingo, so on, and just break it down in an understanding. At least I want to. It needs to be talked about more. It can be talked about enough, because people need to be aware that addiction is something serious. I'll bring this up again, but kind of the dispute is that addiction is something that's all in your head. It's something that you just don't want to do. You don't have your willpower will come into question, and there's a connection that we'll make with that, but that's the dispute, is that it's just something that we drink just like I would drink just because I want to drink, and I can't help myself, and that makes me weak-minded and what have you. And it's not addiction isn't an illness. It's just people who lack self-control, things like that. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. That's kind of the dispute, is that it's not an illness. It's not a disorder. It's not anything of the sort. It's just something that, it's almost just like they consider it a crime. It's chosen behavior, and they'll start bringing up oh well, can't you be addicted to crime then? And they could slippery slide it in all sorts of slippery slide fallacy into all sorts of nonsense, BS, and without a fundamental understanding. And that's just what I want to go over, a fundamental understanding of why how we show addiction is a disease, so that way people can just understand why it needs to be taken seriously, because it is an illness. So we need to start by defining things so we know what we're talking about. We need to define addiction, and we need to define disease. Disease can be defined as an abnormal condition that affects a specific part or parts of an organism, especially with specific symptoms in a specific area that has consistent symptoms, testable symptoms, that is not an injury. If you break your leg, you have specific symptoms affecting a specific area, but that is an injury, and that's something that is makes it categorically different than disease. If you got it from an injury, it's an injury. If you didn't, it has at least the potential to be a disease. There's some other branch there too, branching, but then basically disease is not an injury that or one part, or especially one part, but not necessarily one part of the body is affected by specific symptoms, because we're trying to match up if there's a specific source to specific symptoms. When we see these symptoms, do they lead back to the same source? Addiction can be defined as a chronic dysfunction of the memory, motivation, and reward systems of the brain, of the brain chemistry, the reward, memory, and motivation brain chemistry. It affects a large part of the frontal cortex, and I'm trying to avoid a lot of the specific science, because we're not getting in. This isn't a neurobiology class, and that's not where the expertise needs to be. That's for the neuroscientists, need to be experts on there, relay the general information, and we know what to avoid and how it generally works. And what happens is, there is something in medical science called the disease model, which is just a map. It just means we should be able to find these symptoms, and they will, these three symptoms lead to the same conclusion, to this kind of condition. And if we see that on a consistent basis, so not just 100 people, but we see it as a widespread thing with hundreds of thousands of people, and even more, into millions of people having this, the same symptoms coming from a same source. We call that, that's not an injury, of course. We can call that disease. And there's other branches, but I'm just trying to be general. Disorder, something that gets kind of overlapping and confused with disease. They kind of can overlap. Usually disorders only regarding function stuff, but it gets blurry. Medical science and it isn't perfected. There's still so much we're learning about the brain and addiction and the human body in general, that we're always making advances. But for now, we have a good understanding that what happens, what we use is we apply this disease model, and we look for the same symptoms that this person's brain, like a common symptom is that the addict doesn't feel normal without the source of addiction. For me, alcohol, I'll just use alcohol to make it easy for the example. If I don't have alcohol in my system, I don't feel normal. Well, that's because the addiction, when you reach the point of addiction, and I really think there's different levels of addiction. You can be very, very addicted, or just kind of lightly addicted. I don't think it's so black and white. You go from clearly non-addicted to boom, you're addicted hardcore. You can't, chronic, forever. You're doomed, stuck on it for life. Some addicts recover pretty quickly and they never have problems again. Some of them, like Philip Seymour Hoffman, kind of struggle for it, and some people just have a constant battle throughout life, and that's what I'm preparing for. But with the disease model, we look for these specific circumstances, like this person's. For me, I had my mind needed alcohol to be regular, to be normal. When you develop that kind of dependency, it's essentially that dependency is what we call addiction. People say, "Oh, well, that's not normal behavior." Well, I mean, no shit. You've developed an addiction at that point. You've established that, so you can't judge someone for being normal. It's like judging someone who, I know it's a little bit different because an injury is an injury, but if someone breaks their leg, you're like, wow, what, why are you not walking normal? I mean, they broke their leg, and even if it's something where, if it's some kind of bone disease of the legs or some sort, and they can't walk, like, oh, why are you walking funny? It's just crazy. There's people that say it's all in your head, and why I like to bring that up is because, in a funny way, they're not wrong, because it is coming all from the brain. It's addiction is. People forget that the brain is part of your body. It's an organ, and it's part of our body. Not unlike our heart or parts of our gut. It's not an extremity like an arm, but it is part of our body still, and it can be physically. It's a physical part of our body. It can be physically damaged or changed, and an addiction can be tested to where your brain chemistry has been changed. A physical part of your body has been changed. Some people have brought up that certain chemicals have additives in them, and alcohol doesn't have an additive in it, so you can't be addicted to alcohol in the same way as another chemical. And I mean, perhaps in specific chemistry ways, because we're addicted to different things differently, like on a chemistry level, yes, the addiction's probably different, but in the coming to the core of it, where you've established a dependency, where your body needs that to be normal, that is addiction. And addiction is a weird disease, but cancer is a weird disease, and no one goes around saying that's not a disease. I mean, that's cancer is very in kind of its own realm, but it functions and can be classified as a disease. Addiction is really in its own realm. It's kind of its own monster, but it's just because it's different doesn't mean it's not a disease, because it follows the core model. Is the important part in medical science is if we establish, look, if we can find a source of specific symptoms, and then we see an individual experiencing symptoms, and then we can test for the source. It's clear that addiction fits that model. Anyway, I think I summed up what I needed to say. Addiction is a disease because it fits the medical sciences established model of disease model. If we're gonna say, let's map out a source with symptoms, and if we can find this consistently, then we'll call these things diseases, and let's categorize how to treat them. Addiction fits that so simply that it's unquestionable. It's kind of like people ask the question, is alcohol a drug? And that's like asking is water a liquid? It's kind of in that. There's some people that just don't know, and that's okay. That knowledge just kind of needs to be spread, and it should be more common knowledge, because just especially right now, I should have looked up more statistics, but I know addiction is a huge detriment on our country and the whole world, that we can fix, that needs to be handled a whole lot differently, a whole lot better, and more. That's going to be what I get into tomorrow. I might even have to turn this into a 3-parter longer this week, but I'm excited for all this, because essentially what I really want to cover is addiction science, and just because it is addicts are just seen as criminals and as bad people, and something separate like uh, I've talked about this with friends before, but something like my DUI is something into like uh, a different realm where I would say, in all honesty, I do think that uh, there's some that's leaving the realm of addiction and going into something, that should have some punishment or repercussion, because, I could have hurt someone. It was a public risk, of course, and not just the same as like me getting drunk in my room, which, that changed. My DUI was from 2015, and it, just made sure nothing like that happened again. DUI is one thing, addiction is another. Addiction is an illness, and that's the topic here. Addiction needs to be treated and not punished. So, addiction is a disease. Spread the word. Anyway, that's all. Yeah, that's it. Thanks so much for joining me and listening to me. More information tomorrow. I had fun talking about this. It's an interesting topic, very relevant, of course, too. So, I'm gonna go home tonight. Do my workouts, and I'll just touch base with you on tomorrow's entry. So, take care, everybody. And see you tomorrow. Bye bye.